1 week season.
Hey, and welcome in, OWS fam. So glad you are with us. We are back in the DFS lab. It is Friday, November 1st. So welcome to November. As always, the show presented by 1 week season. The purpose of the show, build a DraftKings lineup and use that as a way to talk through the upcoming slate. In this case, it is week 9. As you can see below, scrolling below, 40% off of Inner Circle right now at 1 week season. Use the code OWS40. A great opportunity to jump in about at the midseason point. So if you've been thinking about it, and give it a try. I'm your host, Cheeseman, as always, and I am joined now by Papy. Papy, week 9 is upon us, but as we always do, a brief look back at week 8. How was week 8 for you?
Yeah, week 8 was a good week for me. Had a late Millie Maker sweat going. I was in the top 10, into the 4 o'clock, midway through the 4 o'clock games. I only had the Bears defense going, and so I was pulling for a defensive touchdown there. But doesn't always work out. I think that team ended somewhere around 140, somewhere around there. But that was just a Millie Maker only team. My main team also, was profitable, won. So whenever that team wins, it's usually a good week for me. So it was all around a solid week. Certainly can't complain. You take wins in DFS, but I would categorize it as a solid week. And really, it was Hall that killed me at running the chalk, running back of the week on my main team. My main team was pretty loaded, except for him. He was what held it back from really being a huge week. So, happens, and on to the next one.
Yeah, man, I hear you. I had some Hall too. I had a lot of Tyreek Hill. I think that was the biggest thing that just kind of capped my upside. I had, some lineups with Devon Achane by himself, but I stacked Achane and Tyreek Hill a decent amount just because I was trying to just, like with that block, maybe get like 50 plus fantasy points, and it didn't work out. But for me too, it was a profitable week. Again, Jameis Winston and the Cedric Tillman stack, I had a lot of that. So I'll take it. Week 7 was a down week, so it's nice just to have a profitable week and kind of move on. So yeah, man. So let's jump in here to let's start with ownership. And then we'll kind of get an overall, feel for week 9 from your perspective once we jump into lineup building. But as we start out looking at ownership here, what jumps out to you?
Yeah, so it's interesting, and I hate to say this about any week because I think every week's an opportunity, but I kind of hate this week. And what I mean by that is just that there's a lot of sort of middling options where nothing really stands out as, hey, this is a good game to go to. This is a good way to stack. I feel like I can poke holes in every different lineup that I make and kind of throw it away and say, try again. And then I get the same type of result. I mean, even when you look at ownership here and you look at the prices of everybody here that's expected to be the chalk, no one is a value, really. I mean, Cedric Tillman is 4,300. He's still above the 4,000 line. And also, he has had a good game, looked good with Winston, but he's got a much tougher matchup this week. So it's not like he's a sure thing. And then if you look below him, other than some defenses, and I think Disley at tight end, who Hurst is supposed to be back this week too, so that kind of dings him as a value play. There's really nobody there that is like, oh, this guy is your value.
Yeah.
It's pretty tight. You don't have a here's a clear even guy that's like low 6K range running back maybe where you're like, this guy's clear, a good value. It's very sort of up in the air week with a lot of similar middling options with not a lot of great value. So, and a ton of games that again are all kind of totals are all kind of like, well, this game could get there or it could not. So I think it's a tough week.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you like to your point, you really in terms of like players below 4K that are not a tight end or a defense, Ray McLeod is the first one at wide receiver for the Falcons at 11% own. And you just see like, if you go to running back here, Kamara, he's going to garner some ownership and rightly so. But, like Saquon Barkley is, or Kyron Williams is the, one of those 8K running backs. He's a ways down there, but not unowned. Derrick Henry's at 3%. Saquon Barkley is kind of in the middle there at 7%. So far, as you can see, the field is not seeing really much of an opportunity to pay up to those like higher priced guys. It's more of a mid-range week. And as we talk about a lot on 1 week season, every week, JM to Win says this a lot, every week is kind of like a unique puzzle where you have to find the way to fit the pieces together that are unique to that week. And this week, you just see a lot of mid-range guys, a lot of mid-range running backs, receivers. Some of those mid-range receivers have just not been putting up great numbers. The tight ends at that same price range have been much more consistent. So, yeah, man, I agree. It is an interesting week and a tough week just with a lot of spots where you could go, but might not work out. And then the spot you don't go to ends up being the spot you needed. So anything that stands out otherwise to ownership or in terms of ownership, like at any of the positions, QB, running back, wide receiver, is you can look at QB for a sec here. Geno is currently projected as the top QB, followed by Daniel Jones and then Dak Prescott. But you don't really have any like majorly chalky QBs.
Yeah, and that shows you sort of the kind of week that it is, that there's really not a QB where people are like, this is the game, so one of the QBs is going to be chalk or both are going to be chalk. It's so spread out, and I don't even know if, these ownership projections are spread out enough. It might be more spread out than even we're projecting it to be. Because there really isn't just that spot. You can make a case for so many different guys in so many different games this week. And so I think that's a very telling thing of the week is that there's no QB that's really, really going to be chalk. And when we see you alluded to Ray McLeod, like he's still Ray McLeod. Like, I mean, is he going to get you, 20 plus points? Like probably not. And he's the place that the field is, looking to go. And I think Chase Brown was one of the chalkier running backs. And I think he played 50% of the snaps last week. So again, you're talking about a guy who's not even that cheap. He's almost 6K. And he played 50% of the snaps last week, and it's like this guy's going to be chalk. It just speaks to the week, really. I think.
Yeah, it does. So let's jump into DraftKings here, and I'll pull up the lobby. But I want to ask you on a week like this, where you're not feeling great, what is your kind of North Star that helps you kind of determine it? Do you just say, you know what, these bets are a little shakier than normal, that I'm going to play my 1 or 2, 3 or 4 quarterbacks, but I'm just going to have to take the higher variance and realize this week may not be, it might not go, there's a higher chance that it just doesn't go my way this week? Or is there some other way, some other things, stats, or just indicators, symbols that you look for that helps you determine where to go? And I'm just gonna pull up the Millie because we already know that's what we're building for.
So I think on a week like this, what I try not to do is to think I have to cover all my bases. Where I'm like, okay, I have to make sure I get some exposure to all the things that I think could happen because there's just too many things. There's too many games. I mean, if I went through each one of these and said I could make a case for stacking this game this week, there's probably 8 games or 9 games where it's like I could make a case to stack this game. And so I think a losing strategy, unless you're playing 150 lineups, which I'm not, is to try to think to yourself all right, I just want to have one lineup of each coin. I'm going to play 16 different quarterbacks because I want to try to cover each of these games. And I've made that mistake, I think, in the past, on weeks like this. And so I think instead I'm going to just basically suck it up, narrow it down to a couple games and say these are the games I'm betting on. And if I'm right, great. It'll probably be naturally low owned because there's so many options. And yeah, there's a lot of options. So maybe another game outperforms it and I'm wrong. But, the only way to really be profitable on this week, I think, is to pick a game or two and go for them.
Absolutely. And one thing I was just thinking as you were saying that is sometimes on weeks like this, what I like to focus on is just don't have any massive duds in your lineup. Because sometimes you're I got to find the ceiling. But sometimes the key can just be not rostering those big plays that totally crater your lineup, and just having a solid build and hopefully a couple of your solid plays hit ceiling is another way that I do like to look at it. But with that, man, where do you want to start here at the Millie? Again, we're building for the millionaire, so you really have to take a few more chances in this contest. 161,000 entries, and as you all pretty much the top lineup in the Millie is typically the top lineup a lot of times on the week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we're going to go with as our primary stack here with the Dallas Atlanta game. And again, like I said, you kind of You kind of just have to pick a game. I think this one has as much potential as any of the other ones. We're going to go with Kirk Cousins the other way. So we're going to go with Cousins.
Sorry about that. Look at me.
I'm just Cousins at home.
You can tell where my mind is.
I'm kind of glad you did that in a way, because I actually suspect Dak will be the more popular way to stack this game.
Yeah.
I don't know for sure, but I just kind of get the feeling people would rather play Dak for some reason.
I get the same feeling.
And I like Cousins, at home here. I think if the game goes off, he probably has a good game. We're going to stack him with London, his top receiver. And London, I don't think was very involved last week. He's there he is. And London is expected to be popular because he's a relatively affordable player who
So I'm going to jump to QB ownership real quick. Right, but London's going to be one of the highest owned receivers, the highest owned right now. But Kirk Cousins is way down here. He's like the 10th or 11th most owned quarterback at this time. So I like that.
Yeah, and that's one of those things that sort of, if you ever see a top receiver, he's going to be chalk, and you like him, you agree that he could have a good game, and then you should always sort of check, well, what's his QB's ownership? You'd be surprised it's not like how often it's like, oh, everybody wants to play this receiver, but the QB is going to be 3%. So you can kind of get some more lower owned exposure just by stacking him if you want. And then we're going to go with Ferguson at tight end as our cowboy.
Like that. Getting the tight end exposure through the game stack, always something that I like to do as well.
Yeah, you're hoping a lot of points and that tight ends thrive on touchdowns. He gets one of them. And Ferguson is always involved. He's probably one of the highest floor tight ends. And we're not playing for floor, but it's nice to know that he always has the involvement. Like he's really their second option there. And so, we're gonna go with him, basically hope that this game produces points. The next correlation we're going to do, and we'll go ahead and we'll just get our cheap defense out of the way, and we're going to do the Giants defense.
Okay. Yep.
I think the Giants defense is personally my favorite defense on the week, and not just for, Millie Maker only cheap defense, play them. I think that they're a solid pick this week because they've been getting a lot of pressure. And that's what matters as a fantasy defense, really, is how much pressure you get. And they'll probably give up some points to Jaden Daniels, but it's also a division game. It's at home. There's a chance that it's just a more low-scoring game and they get some sacks. Maybe they get a strip sack. So I think for the price, when there's not a lot of value, I think the Giants will probably be a staple of my my lineups this week. And this one has a little bit to do with injury. If you go find Tracy on the Giants, I think he is trending towards playing. I think he's 5.5K. He's in step 4 of the concussion protocol, I think.
Fourth phase. Yep. Fourth phase of the 5-step concussion protocol.
As of yesterday.
He's moved through it quickly because, on a short week, obviously, and looks like he may play. Yeah.
Right. So go ahead and plug him in. And I think that, again, I think he's more likely to play than not. And he's really taken over the backfield from Singletary. He's, getting basically all the work when he was healthy. And so, again, a guy who's 5.5 that's getting that type of work and at home, you want to play the defense anyway. So it's sort of a natural fit to save some money and go with him. At the other running back spot, we're going to go back to the well from last week with Achane.
Love that. Yeah, Achane is just 6,700. It's hard to get away from him just with the amount of involvement he has in the passing game. And man, 3 yards away from the 100-yard bonus last week on 10 carries.
Yeah, Tillman last week when they took the 100-yard bonus away, that one cut me deep.
That hurt.
But the price is just too low, really, on him. I mean, he's not priced for having Tua back. He has a ton of involvement in the passing game. He's an explosive player, one of the guys who can just always break the slate. And so I think he's a good just kind of GPP tournament play almost always until his price comes up. So now when we go to receiver, we're going to go ahead and we're going to go with AJ Brown. So we're going to pay up here at wide receiver 1. I think somebody is going to hurt the Jaguars on the Eagles. I mean, the most likely candidates being Brown or Barkley. I mean, you kind of flip a coin for me as to which one it's going to be.
Even though Saquon right now, Jalen Hurts last week, 3 rushing touchdowns. Like when they get inside the 1, they'll run that tush push play 3 times in a row. So that just doesn't make me excited to play Saquon, and maybe that's why you should play him this week. But Jalen Hurts just takes up so much of the potential touchdown equity.
Yeah, speaking of which, that team I had that was 8th in the Millie Maker had Barkley on it, a low-owned Barkley, who was like, I desperately needed those Barkley TDs on that team.
Imagine if 2 of those had gone to Barkley instead of Jalen Hurts.
If 2 of those went to Barkley instead of Hurts, I might have won $1 million. We might be having a very different conversation today if those.
Oh my god, dude!
I think the worst was after Hurts got the 3rd one, he like handed the ball to Barkley. He was like, "You did all the work. Like here you go." You know, like symbolically, like gave it to him to spike. And I'm like, the symbolism doesn't mean nothing to me. You know. But
exactly, that doesn't give me fantasy points. Yeah, that's
no, I get zero for that. But yeah, I really needed those Barkley touchdowns last week. So
yeah, dude.
watched them all. But yeah, I think between Brown or Barkley, one of them I think posted. I mean, they might both post a big game here, and I want exposure to one or the other. Brown is such an interesting player because he really hasn't seen volume. Like if you look at him, if you pull up his profile here.
Yeah, man. Wow.
You know, when you think about paying $8K for a guy, do you really want to pay it for a guy who's seen 6 and 5 targets over his last 2 games? It feels wrong, but you can see the fantasy points that he managed to produce, you know, with those targets. So it's just he's crazily efficient, and I think that you're basically just hoping, okay, well, this is a 9 or 10 target game, and then I get 25 to 30 points out of you is, you know, sort of what you're hoping for.
And to that point, Jacksonville is tough against the run. This is a bit of a pass funnel matchup.
Yeah, it is. So, you know, you're saying, all right, he's the one who hurts them. And again, I do think that one of them is going to hurt them. So we'll go with Brown for this lineup.
You got to get a little extra guest joining our show here. I like that.
Yeah, my cat Bestet. Yeah, there's nothing little about this Maine Coon. She's a giant cat. Yeah, she's saying hi.
Stuff.
So the next place that we want to go here is we want to go to Olave, Saints wide receiver at 6,100.
Got it. Yeah, man. This is okay. I see what's happening here.
And this is he just feels mispriced for being clear number 1. He saw a bunch of targets last week. I think Derek Carr is looking on the right side of questionable this week. I don't know if he is officially playing, but I think he's been practicing in a limited fashion. I think he's on the right side of questionable. So getting him back, I think impacts the price there of his receivers, and they probably didn't adjust that quite enough. Sort of like getting, Tua back for the Dolphins, probably didn't quite adjust those prices enough. So same concept really. And he plays the Panthers. I mean, the Panthers stink, and they sort of have given up. I mean, I think trading away Deontay Johnson is sort of a sign to the team, like we throw in the white flag, They traded him away for basically nothing, and they traded a good corner to the Steelers for him, and then just gave him away. So, I mean, that's sort of a white flag to the team, like we're throwing in the towel. So I think, I think someone hurts them.
Dude, I like that, man. And Kamara, that's like a bit. I mean, if Kamara, assuming the Saints score points here, and they scored 47 or was it 43 or something like that in week 1 against the Panthers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's no saying they couldn't do that again, especially if Carr's back. And if the touchdowns aren't coming through Kamara, then this Olave play is great leverage off of that high expected Kamara ownership.
Yeah.
And not to say Kamara is still a good play. He is, but I like this a lot.
And so, I mean, at this point, I feel pretty good about this team. I like the 3 top receivers, like everyone that we have here pretty much. And now we have 3,100 left. So it's like, all right, who's going to be our $3,100 superstar here? And we are going with Burton, the Bengals receiver. And this is one where, it's like, And he's at 1 p.m. You can move him. I didn't even look at the times of all the games when I made this, but I'm sure one of those. I think the one of those guys is at 4. I think the Eagles game's at 4. So you can, if you want to be official, you can switch them around.
Yes, I'll do that. I'll do that.
But yeah, it's like, oh, Burton, heaven help me, Burton. Am I really this gullible that I'm gonna play you on some Joe Burrow coach speak? I mean, it's a little more than that. They played him like I think 30 or 40% of the snaps last week when Higgins was out. Higgins, I think, looks like he's on the wrong side. And this is if Higgins plays, then they would have to make an adjustment probably here because there's a good chance he won't see the field that much if Higgins plays. But if Higgins sits, which it seems like he's on the wrong side of questionable, or maybe there's even some rumors that he's on the wrong side of questionable with a contract injury. So whatever the reason, though, if Higgins doesn't play, then Burton, I think, will probably be the guy who starts to get some snaps. And Burrow did say that he deserves more playing time. So for whatever that's worth, sitting here, I'll probably next week I'll be like, yeah, I don't know why I just believed Joe Burrow and played Burton as my salary saver. But if he does end up getting in there, and if Burrow means Burrow's the guy throwing the ball, so if he throws it to him more because it's in there and he wants to prove his point that he's deserves more opportunities, then maybe this is the week that you can take advantage. And I do feel decent about this team outside of Burton, who is obviously very speculative. But, when there's not a lot of value, you're playing a $3,100 guy on some quarterback speak, welcome to DFS.
Dude, I will. You'll never run a narrative by me that I would not say, hey, let's give it a shot. Seriously, dude, I love Narrative Street. I've lost way too much money on Narrative Street, especially in NBA, where it's like, hey, man, this is the revenge game for LeBron or whoever else, and he's going to put up 40, and no, it doesn't happen. But the receiver stuff, I do buy into. In fact, I probably should be a part of my process each week to say, have there been any receivers this past week who were complaining, or in the case of Romeo Doubs, he got suspended for a game, and then the next game back, they fed him. Like, they fed him the rock, and he had a big game. And I remember thinking to myself, why didn't I just play Romeo Doubs? Like, no one's going to play him because he's coming off suspension. And, maybe the Packers, we've talked about this before. Maybe the Packers are like, I know we suspended him, but we probably should get him the ball a little bit here and make sure that he feels like he's a part of this team. So I know this isn't exactly the same situation. It's just Burrow saying, hey, this guy's been playing well, so it's a little different. He hasn't been complaining. But, man, I love Narrative Street, man, and it's just one of those things that most people probably shrug off. And so it works out more often than you would expect.
It does work out more often than you feel like it should. I will say that.
Yeah.
It does feel that way.
Yeah, man, cool. Well, for the podcast, this is the lineup we settled on. Kirk Cousins at quarterback, Tyrone Tracy and Devon Achane at the 2 running back slots. Drake London, Jermaine Burton? Jermaine Burton, the 3,100 receiver for the Bengals, and Chris Olave. Jake Ferguson, tight end. AJ Brown in the flex, Giants defense. Pappy, great stuff as always, man. Any final thoughts before we ship this one out?
I'm excited for the week. We're midway. Is this technically midway now, or we have? I guess there's this or next week. You could. Or last week, I guess you could say, or midweek now. So midway through the season. NFL's got a game on Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas this year. So it's a holiday fest for NFL games. So it's a fun year.
It is, man. It is. We basically are at the halfway point. Basically, weeks 9 and 10 to me feel like, the halfway point of the season. We're flying, dude, but still got plenty of time left to hit something big. So I hope that you guys hit something big this weekend for week 9. Thanks for joining us on the DFS Lab. Happy good luck, and thanks for being on the show.